Countries and governments are made up of people, and people aren't perfect. We all make mistakes, some smaller than others. But sometimes, those in power make calls that end up being epic fails or having severely negative consequences. Here are 10 of the biggest whoops decisions throughout history that countries have lived to regret. Buckle up because some of these are doozies. Prohibition in the United States. From 1920 to 1933, the United States had a constitutional ban on the production, transportation, and sale of alcoholic beverages, known as the Prohibition era. On the surface, this was intended to reduce crime and corruption, improve health, and reduce the power of criminal gangs. But it ended up having the opposite effect. Alcohol consumption did not decline, it just moved underground. Organized crime rose sharply as criminal organizations sprung up to meet the demand. Government revenues from taxes disappeared. The amendment damaged respect for the law and led to widespread civil disobedience. By 1933, the 21st Amendment was passed to end national prohibition. It's widely considered one of the biggest policy blunders in U.S. history. One sip of that idea, and they quickly realized it was a flop. The partition of Hindustan. In 1947, Britain partitioned the subcontinent of India into a secular Republic of India and the Islamic State of Pakistan. The partitioning along religious lines led to one of the largest mass migrations in history, and communal violence between Hindus and Muslims killed between 500,000 and 1 million people. Over 14 million people were displaced. Families were torn apart as neighbors turned on one another. The scars of partition still affect politics in both India and Pakistan today. While independence from Britain was wanted, carving up the country based on religion divided land and people and unleashed chaos. The War of 1812. While the intentions behind the U.S. declaration of war against Britain in 1812 were understandable, given tensions over trade restrictions and the impressment of American sailors, it was an unfortunate decision fraught with blunders. American forces failed to invade Canada as planned and ended up barely defending themselves from British counterattacks. The war dragged on for 2 long years with little progress. Meanwhile, the cost strained the new nation's finances, and the conflict interrupted important domestic economic growth. By 1814, British troops had entered Washington, D.C., and burned down the White House and other buildings. A peace treaty signed at the end of 1814 settled very few of the original causes of conflict. The Third Reich invades Russia. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launched a massive surprise invasion of the Soviet Union called Operation Barbarossa with over 3 million Axis soldiers. It was intended to last only 6 months as Germany rapidly conquered territory and captured resources. But they severely underestimated the Red Army's strength and Russia's resourcefulness in defense of their motherland. The campaign dragged on for over 4 years in brutal fighting, often in extreme weather conditions. The lack of winter clothing left many German forces freezing to death. Logistical issues like broken supply lines made success impossible. By 1943, momentum had completely shifted in the Soviets' favor. Hitler's overreach into Russia drained German resources and manpower, contributing greatly to their defeat. Annexation of the Sudetenland. In 1938, at the Munich Agreement, Britain and France gave Nazi Germany permission to annex the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia in the hope it would appease Hitler's expansionist ambitions. But it had the opposite effect. It showcased appeasement as weak and encouraged future German aggression. Within a year, Hitler had occupied and dismantled the remainder of Czechoslovakia despite guarantees to protect its sovereignty. The annexation shattered confidence in the Western Allies to stand up to German demands and fed a cycle of further appeasement attempts until World War II fully erupted. While intentions were to preserve peace, the actions only inspired further havoc. Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. After a communist coup in Afghanistan in 1978, the Soviet Union invaded on Christmas Eve 1979 with over 100,000 troops. They aimed to bolster the new regime against internal opposition. But the occupation dragged on for 9 long years of brutal urban and mountain combat against Mujahideen guerrillas aided by the US, Pakistan, and others. Afghan resistance proved fiercer than expected. The costly intervention severely damaged the Soviet economy, lowered morale in the Red Army, and contributed to growing domestic anti-war sentiment. By 1989, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev announced the withdrawal of Soviet troops. The invasion is now seen as a major factor that hastened the decline and 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. Fighting in the Afghan graveyard of empires ended up being the USSR's most devastating foreign policy blunder, Rome's invasion of Parthia. In 53 BC, Roman dictator Julius Caesar ordered a punitive expedition across the Euphrates River into the formidable Parthian Empire of Persia. While Rome had defeated many opponents, Parthia's highly mobile horse archer cavalry and use of simulated retreat tactics proved very difficult for the Romans to combat. A Roman army of over 20,000 men was ambushed and massacred, with Crassus being one of those killed. The reversal marked the eastern frontier of the Roman Republic and discouraged future invasions into Parthia for over 200 years. Rome's pride had underestimated an unconventional enemy on their own territory. France and Britain declare war on Germany. When Germany invaded Belgium and Luxembourg as part of the opening campaign of World War I, Britain issued an injunction that led them to enter the war on the side of France and Belgium on August 4, 1914. But there was little strategic rationale for doing so. Neither country had any serious defense obligations to those invaded, and Germany did not directly threaten British or French territory. By drawing strict ideological lines at a tactical invasion, both nations helped escalate a regional conflict started by nationalistic secret pacts and alliances into a catastrophic world war. Over 4 years, their involvement led to over 20 million combined military and civilian deaths for little tangible benefit. Eager patriotism rather than reason trapped two countries in a horror they could have avoided. U.S. invasion of Iraq. Shifting geopolitical alliances after 9/11 led the U.S. into war with Iraq to topple Saddam Hussein based on flawed intelligence about weapons of mass destruction and allegations of al-Qaeda ties. But no such weapons stockpiles or links existed. The poorly planned occupation faced a virulent Sunni insurgency, escalating costs, over 4,400 U.S. troop deaths, and severe damage to America's international reputation due to abuse scandals in Iraqi prisons. Overthrowing Saddam failed to stabilize the region or curb Iranian power as intended. The war severely strained strategic capabilities just as new global threats like terrorism and China emerged. By every measure, it was a tragedy that damaged U.S. credibility for over a decade, with impacts still felt today. Napoleon invades Russia. Generally considered the worst strategic disaster in European history, the demise of Napoleon's Grande Armée during the 1812 invasion of Russia is truly catastrophic. Over 600,000 French and Allied troops crossed the Neman River into Russia to what was assumed to be a quick defeat of Tsar Alexander I. But stubborn Russian resistance, the vast unoccupied frontier, and early winter combined to destroy Napoleon's army. Nightmare conditions saw men freezing or starving amid frequent Cossack raids. By the time the battered, decimated army recrossed into Poland, only 93,000 soldiers remained of the original force. It represented an unprecedented military calamity and the crumbling of Napoleon's aura of invincibility. His empire would never recover from the debacle, accelerating his final defeat at Waterloo and changing the map of 19th century Europe. While the intentions behind some of these decisions were understandable or aimed to prevent perceived threats, massive overconfidence, lack of flexibility to changing circumstances, failures of intelligence, and inadequate planning crippled their prospects. No country is perfect or immune from erring on pivotal choices that carry unforeseen risks. The lessons of humility, pragmatism, and understanding limitations still hold great value today. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you found this video informative, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more historical updates.